Remember when gig work was supposed to be just that? A gig? A side hustle? Extra money for the weekend? Something you did between real jobs or to save up for a vacation? But somewhere along the way, that narrative quietly shifted. The gig economy is breaking from the inside, not because it failed, but because it succeeded too well. Today, the very system that was pitched as a supplement to traditional income is now becoming a fragile full-time lifeline for millions of Americans, and that's causing deep cracks inside the economy itself. Let's start with the basics. The gig economy was always marketed as flexibility without the constraints of traditional employment. Want to deliver food in the evenings? Cool. Want to take on freelance design projects on weekends? Awesome. That's the dream. But over the past few years, something shifted. More and more people don't just treat gig work as a side hustle anymore, they depend on it as their main source of income. 70 million Americans, representing 36% of the workforce, now freelance, contributing $1.27 trillion to the US economy. A recent research from TransUnion found that over 37% of US gig workers now rely on gig work as their primary income source. That's not pocket change. That's a fundamental restructuring of how America works. And when your income depends on rideshare apps, delivery tasks, or online gigs, that's no longer a hobby. That's economic dependency. And here's the twist. The very structures that make this possible, the algorithms, the platforms, and the lack of traditional support systems, are now what's cracking under pressure. Let's break down exactly why the gig economy, once celebrated for flexibility, is now facing existential strain from within. Platforms like Uber, DoorDash, TaskRabbit, Upwork, they've evolved, and so has the workforce. People aren't just moonlighting anymore. They're living on gig income. But here's what's even more striking. The number of full-time independent workers more than doubled from 13.6 million in 2020 to 27.7 million in 2024. These aren't people picking up a few extra Uber rides on Saturday nights. These are professionals who've made freelancing their primary, often their only source of income. The growth looks impressive on paper. The global gig economy stood at $582.2 billion in 2025, and analysts project it will balloon to over $2 trillion within a decade. But zoom in closer, and you'll see the instability beneath those glossy projections. In September 2024, while the broader economy added jobs, the gig economy lost 114,000 jobs that month. As of September, U.S. gig employment was down 1.2% from a year ago. The very foundation that millions now depend on is already beginning to crumble. If gig work has become your main job, then fairness becomes a real question. Across the workforce, surveys show that 47% of people believe gig workers earn less than permanent employees for the same work. Some say gig workers earn up to 10 to 25% less per hour, and others report gaps exceeding 25%. That's not just a few bucks here and there, that's a structural wage gap. And inequality in earnings isn't the only problem. Unlike traditional jobs, gig workers rarely receive benefits like health insurance, paid leave, or retirement plans. 88% of gig workers said they had health insurance, but rates were lower than among other adults. That missing 12% represents millions of people one medical emergency away from bankruptcy. Only about 15% of gig workers globally have access to any form of Social Security, according to broader industry surveys and economic surveys. One of the biggest myths about the gig economy is that workers have autonomy. In reality, most platforms control workers through opaque algorithms. These systems decide who gets work, surge pricing determines how much it pays per gig, and customer ratings can make or break your ability to earn at all. Workers often describe these algorithmic systems as black boxes that control their employment without transparency or recourse. Drivers have reported loss of access or pay changes due to seemingly arbitrary algorithmic decisions with little ability to appeal. Algorithms were supposed to create efficiency. Instead, for many workers, they create instability and unpredictability. Another challenge often overlooked is that while gig pay may stay flat, the cost of doing the work keeps rising. Take delivery drivers or gig drivers using their vehicles. They pay for fuel, maintenance, insurance, vehicle depreciation. When these costs rise, the real income, what workers actually take home, shrinks. According to labor discussions and analyses shared publicly, in some cases like delivery block work, the net income for 3 hours of work in 2025 is actually 45 to 50% lower in real terms compared to similar gigs a decade earlier, after you account for rising costs. Think about that. You're working the same hours, you're getting paid the same on paper, but inflation and operational costs eat away almost half of what you're really earning. That's a system showing stress from within. And here's the cruel irony. While gig workers struggle, the platforms they work for are thriving. Uber recorded revenue of $43.9 billion in 2024, a 17.96% increase from the previous year, with net income of $9.8 billion. DoorDash recorded a 24% year-over-year revenue growth in 2024, with $10.72 billion in revenue. The companies have built empires on the backs of workers they refuse to classify as employees, pocketing billions while their workforce absorbs all the risk. These platforms succeeded in recruiting millions into gig work. They made participation easy. No resume, no interviews, no long onboarding. But those same low barriers now mean massive workforce dependency without the infrastructure to support it. That's why people are feeling burnout, instability, and financial vulnerability, even as gig work continues to grow. The recent data on consumer financial stress paints an even grimmer picture. The share of U.S. consumers living paycheck to paycheck remained high at 66% in October 2025, and 42% of consumers live paycheck to paycheck because they have no other choice, an 18% jump since August. Among gig workers specifically, the strain is devastating. Gig workers are more than 6 times as likely to live paycheck to paycheck and struggle to pay their bills. This isn't flexibility, this is survival mode. So what does this breakdown inside the gig economy imply? First, it shows us that flexibility without protection isn't freedom, it's risk. A paycheck that can vanish because an algorithm flaked in its judgment. That's not autonomy. Second, it highlights a deeper economic shift. Traditional employment isn't disappearing, it's being replaced with fragile alternatives. And third, workers are being left to innovate their own survival strategies, whether that means juggling multiple platforms, working long hours to hit incentives, or depending on inconsistent wages just to make ends meet. The gig economy isn't just a labor trend, it's a mirror showing us what happens when a system designed for flexibility becomes a system people must rely on to survive.